I'm Mike Costello, and I'm here with the Reverend Iris Freelander. And in the next few minutes, we'd like to share with you some of our thoughts and ideas about life on the other side. Depending upon your religious tradition and your faith tradition, you may have ideas about what life on the other side is or is going to be. And we'd like to spend a few minutes sharing with you some ideas that are accepted in New Thought, New Age, metaphysical, and esoteric circles. And so we hope that you find this information useful. And we'd like to begin by talking about the fact that life is constant and eternal. And even though we live in this physical life and in this physical world, there is a spiritual dimension to us. We were spirit before we were physical. We are spirit in the physical form. And after this life, we'll move into spirit again. And so let's begin by talking about what life is like on the other side.
Well, to begin with, Michael, I think that the veil between the two worlds has become thinner and thinner. And now it's so thin that it's almost a continuation. And there are many, we always discuss books in our shows, and there are many wonderful books. And a new book that was published last year, Galactic Human, You Are Becoming a Galactic Human. Well, Sheldon Neidl is a scientist who was highly trained as a scientist, and he probably knows more about Nikola Tesla, the great scientist, electrical genius, than probably anyone. And so Sheldon Neidl is not someone who came up through just, quote, religion, just as you are very active and very successful in the business world, as well as being pastor of our church and very knowledgeable spiritually. Well, Sheldon Neidl is very trained in the scientific world, and yet he's bringing through wonderfully viable information. Now, it seems far-fetched to many people to say that there are walk-ins and that people came here from other planets. Well, he's bringing through information from the planet Sirius, Sirius, which is a star. There's 5 stars of the Sirius constellation, or however that's termed, and he is from there. And he's saying that those people from Sirius are going to be helping those of us here on Earth to break through this veil of the connecting two worlds, and that before December of '96, we will have gone into the 5th dimension while still here in our Earth bodies, which sounds very somewhat far-fetched, but it doesn't sound impossible, because with God nothing is impossible. All things are possible with God.
Mm-hmm. And so the message that he's bringing is that there are spiritual beings that are participating with us on the earth plane in the process of life, and that they on the other side are helping us. And of course that is one of the fundamental truths that we believe, is that those on the inner, or those in spirit, are supportive and helpful of us. The idea that when we pass away from this life, or pass from this life into the next, that everything is going to be totally different isn't necessarily true. We have consciousness here, we have awareness here, and they have consciousness where they are, and wherever we are, we have a level of consciousness, and from that level of consciousness we are able to communicate and to support each other.
And more people are connecting the two. More and more people are bringing through information from those who have died, from those on the inner, or they have near-death experiences and they bring back that information. And there's a wonderful lot of books written about near-death experiences. And I think that's no accident, because again, the veil is thinner between the two worlds. And so sometimes it's almost as if we live in two worlds. I know one young friend said of me, I don't know which world you live in most. And that's true to a great extent.
Well, that could be a compliment, and we'll take it as such, because living in both worlds is very important. Dr. Garlish, who was the founder of our fellowship and of our movement, and who died in 1951, as you know, but his life and teaching and his leadership of our church was from 1921 or about 1921 and 2025 until his death in 1951. But he taught, and many of his contemporaries, who were people who had come to this way of thinking, of metaphysical thought and teaching, taught that life, all of life, is energy, and that thought is energy. And of course, what we know scientifically now is that all of the things, the chair that we sit in, the room that we're on, that we're in right now, the television that people are watching right now, though they appear to be real and solid, are really uh, pieces or particles of energy moving at a rate of speed and creating the mass that we see in the physical life. And his teaching, and the teaching of many, has been that we are always alive, we're eternal beings, and that God created us as he himself is eternal, and that where we are has to do with the rate of speed that the vibration that we're in is moving. And that explains why, in many cases, people can see spirit or see ghosts, as we say, or see angels, because everything and everyone is occurring within the same space, which is eternal, but we're at different rates of speed and different vibratory rates. And so we, of course, are a very heavy vibratory rate because we're in the physical. And so often people who have the near-death experiences will talk about that feeling of lightness and that feeling that they go out of their body, yet they're able to see what's here. But they don't see in the same way that they did when they were in the physical body. One of the very consistent things, of course there are many consistent things about the near-death experience, but is that people have this wonderful freeing experience,
Yeah.
that they are immediately free. One of the other things that we know and we see from the near-death experience is that people are still conscious of who and what they are. They
Yeah.
still have that consciousness.
Yes, and then after they die, after their physical body dies, they still have the same consciousness and they still know the people around them, and it's all the same. And I think when they go out in their near-death experiences and they go through the tunnel, they always have the tunnel that they go through. Everyone relates to that. And it's because, like you were saying, there's a vortex of energy. You were talking about energy and vibration.
Yes.
Well, I think that's a vortex of energy they're going through from one dimension to the other. And so it's that, and it looks like a tunnel, it seems like a tunnel, but they're going through that vortex of energy. And I remember once going out of my body years ago, about 35 years ago, and my thought was, here I go again. And it was such a weird sensation. I was meditating, and it was a very weird sensation. And it's like I could relate to one of my 5 brothers more fully. And I went back to a time on the inner planes where that brother and I had been together in another life. And but I went out like in that vortex of energy. And I can relate to that from a personal level.
And of course, what you did too is you went to a point in time where you were able to evaluate that and to learn the lessons that you needed to learn from the experience, and even recognize what you didn't learn from the experience. And I think that's an important aspect of life on the other side. Again, we're consistently receiving information from those who bring spirit messages and from those who are involved in the near-death experience, that there is the reality of the unity with others. We talk, so often people talk about being surrounded by other people, some of whom they know, some of whom they don't know, surrounded by love, total acceptance, total light, and we know also that there is the ability to then, and we believe that on the other side, one of the first things that we do is begin to go through a process of self-evaluation and self-examination in terms of what life taught us and what we learned and what we failed to learn.
And we always do go through that time. And I've been taught that we go backward in time to the beginning of this earth life, and then we go forward in time again to the present time. And then, of course, through the Akashic Records, we can look up other lives and other times that impact on this lifetime and give us important information for this lifetime.
And the Akashic Records, of course, are something that some people may not be familiar with.
Yes, well, the Akashic Records is a record of everything we've ever thought, done, or every thought, act, or deed from time immemorial, from the time we were first created. And that record is kept. And with computers today storing ever so much memory, we can relate more fully to the Akashic Records and see how that might be possible. But of course we know that it's possible because the reflection of it is in the 5th apex of the heart chakra, and we can access that from our own being. And they say it's reflected in a chakra above the head. I don't know about that, but I do know that it's in the heart chakra, and it's on the etheric realm of the Akashic Records are located. and we can access that information when it pertains to us. If we need it, then we can have the help that we need from the inner, because most of us wouldn't be capable of doing it on our own. But there's always that wonderful help on the inner, just as angels are here helping us all the time. Well, they're on the inner helping us, and so are those higher ones of God and the discarnate spirits, those who have lived and died and are on the inner planes, help in a very viable way as well.
So there's a constant reality of the eternal spectrum of life, that life is eternal, and on the other side, life is very similar to life on this side. Now, we think so often of changing our clothes and
Yeah.
going to work, but one of the things that we hear from people on the other side who bring forth the reality and truth of what they're experiencing is that they may choose to do many of the same things. Dr. Garlish, after he passed away, sent messages for some time through his wife, Hattie. And one of the things that he said was that as we come over to the other side, and when he came over to the other side, there are many things that he enjoyed doing and liked to do and continued to do on the other side as he weaned himself, if you will, from the physical life. And so it is not an abrupt transition. It is a transition into a new dimension of life.
Yes. Well, that's another wonderful example of someone you know who I unfortunately didn't get to know, Mrs. Garlish, but you knew her, and you knew that she did indeed receive information from her husband who had died.
Mm-hmm. And so many people who receive information in a form that they could not have by any stretch of the imagination brought forth themselves.
Exactly, that's true. That's what Susie Ward says all the time, my friend who channels her son who died when he was 17. Well, that's 15 years ago, so Matthew would be in his 30s now. But he gives information that she wouldn't have any idea about. And so she knows, well, she knows in ever so many ways that it's Matthew truly coming through her, but it's so very obvious that it is. And it's such a wonderful thing that so many people are able to do that.
Mm-hmm. And of course, on the other side, when we pass from this life into spirit, then we have a period and a time of self-evaluation. We have help from those on the inner. We have a time of healing to overcome the hurts and the pains that we have. And then we begin the process of working out what we're going to do next.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And so there was a friend of mine who took her own life, and I know that I was always taught if you take your life, then you're doomed to something pretty bad. Well, that wasn't true. And Vera came through a psychic medium 1 week later and told me about her life on the inner, and it was such a wonderful comfort to me. I was so grateful to have that information. And in part, what she said was, I stepped back and I thought, my God, I'm dead. And then I realized that I had never been surrounded with greater love than at that moment. And then it's as if she had been in a hospital setting for a time. And I believe that's true. If you need, it's whatever we think we need, but it's all in our mind, as you so well teach always, that it's all in the mind. And when we go over, we still have that same mental body that we had here on earth, and the mind is of the mental body, but not all of it. And so as we live on the inner, having only dropped our physical body, not the other bodies, then we still have the same mentality, the same thought. So if we think we need a hospital, that's what we get.
Mm-hmm.
If we think we need to go fishing, that's what we get,
Mm-hmm.
a stream with fish in it.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever we think we need, that's what we get. Mm-hmm. And then when we've been there for a time and we're more in touch with the reality of that existence, then we start going to classes and learning. And perhaps some of us might teach, and some might just help children, or we might work with helping people go over in death. We have our specific duties, just as we have specific duties here on earth.
Mm-hmm. I think it's very important for people to understand that our teaching and our belief is that no one is ever lost.
Yes.
And your friend who committed suicide, the people who commit the most awful atrocities in this life, and that's not to say that we encourage that, but what we're saying is that God doesn't separate that divine love and light and His presence from any of us for any reason. There is a price to be paid, and the price is paid by us willingly because we understand the reality of karmic law. But the idea that anyone could do anything in life that is going to separate them from God for eternity is is totally repugnant to anything that we believe, and we certainly feel that it is an unfounded theological belief system. And anyone who understands the love of a father and mother for children and has that true feeling for their children know that regardless of what that child does, the love is still going to be there. And if that's true of us in our spiritual walk, it is so much more true of God. And so, as your friend said, she said she stepped back, which of course for her was stepping back in the process of taking her life. And as she
Yes.
stepped back and committed that act, she was immediately surrounded with love.
Yes, and we're always surrounded with the love of God, as you so well said. But one reason we know that we are is that we are a part of God, and a part of God is within us. And there's a name for that. The monad within us is that God spark within, and that God spark is within every living person, and it burns more brightly in others, in some than in others, but it's always there, and it's there, as you said, in the very lowest type of thinking individual and the very most spiritual individual. But in a highly spiritual individual, it would burn so much more brightly.
Mm-hmm.
I remember seeing that light in the body of a Dr. Milton Traeger, who was a medical doctor and also a spiritual healer, and he did wonderful healing work. And he was in Hawaii for many years doing his work, and I saw the light above his head and around his shoulders and going down around his body, but it was most bright around his head area. And it was that beautiful bright blue light. And that's what the monad shows itself as, an electric blue light.
Mm-hmm. And that light, and light itself, is so much a part of the demonstration of who we are. We see it in Scripture
Yes.
over and over again, children of light, the reality of light. The people who go into the near-death experiences see the light, and we know that those who move, and all of us as we step over from this life into the next, will be surrounded by light and by love and by support and by acceptance.
Yes, and acceptance is the key there, because if we know we're accepted by God, then we don't feel so distressed and so hopeless, because when we make mistakes in life, if they're honest mistakes, they're just that. They're mistakes, and they're learning experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can look at other people in that same way, that they're just having learning experiences. And when people do terrible, atrocious things against mankind, well, that's a different thing, but still the spark of God is within them. And as long as they keep reincarnating on earth, then it means that there's hope for them, and that they are having another opportunity to redeem themselves.
Mm-hmm. And in that opportunity to redeem themselves, in that experience of the physical life that they have chosen and that they've come back into, there may be certain pains and sufferings that they are going to endure as a part of their spiritual process of unfoldment and greater understanding. And those are the negative experiences that we see.
Yes.
And those influence other people. And we don't know in the physical what the karmic reality is for ourselves and for others in a conscious way. And so often when we see these tragedies or difficulties that seem to overlap lives, we need to understand that despite what's taking place and despite what we're seeing, and even if it's a terrible and awful circumstance or situation, that it's going to pass away.
Yes.
That this physical life is going to pass away, that those people are going to pass away, we're going to pass away, and we're going to go to the other side where we're going to have clear vision and where we're
Right.
going to clearly be able to understand and interpret and evaluate what these experiences meant. Now that's very difficult for someone who suffers at the hand of someone else, for instance, or
Yes.
someone who has something very precious stolen from them, or someone who is attacked or even murdered. But those things have meanings that we can't understand. And so our role is to always understand and realize that there is peace and there is light and there is God at the center of every experience, and that the time is coming when we'll transcend that and move to the other side.
Yes, and when we are there, we will be able to see clearly. Now we see through a glass darkly,
Mm-hmm.
it's been said, and now then face to face. And we will be able to see more clearly why we had the experiences that we did. And we can know now through meditation and through looking to God for divine guidance, we can know all those things even while we're yet here on earth. if we but look. But the important thing is, as you teach so well, always living in the now and living whatever is here at the moment is the important thing. And we only look to the past if it helps us understand the now. And we don't dread or look to the future too much because, again, living in the now would preclude that.
And for all of us, if we learn to live in the now, to live in the present moment always, we're going to live in the present moment of death.
Yeah.
And we talk about that so often in the church because, after all, we're all going to die.
Yes.
Every one of us is going to die. And when we move into this transition, we will, as you said before, see clearly, and we can and will be conscious. And I believe so firmly that if we can be conscious in the dying process, in the process of dying as our physical bodies die, and at the moment of our death and transition, and we'll certainly be conscious, clearly conscious, when we step into eternal life, I think so much can be gained. And so often we believe, and of course in the ministry and in counseling, where all ministers are faced with dealing with families and individuals at time of transition, at time of terminal and serious illness. And even though we involve ourselves in healing, and that's a major part of what we believe and teach, all of us are going to step forth into eternal life. And so often that period of time in the nursing home, or that period of time in the bed, or the period of sickness is a time of preparation for the transition. And we believe and we see so often that that dear one is suffering, that they're confused, that they're out of touch. In truth, they're preparing to step from this world to the next. They don't care what they wear anymore, or what they eat, or how they look. They're in the process of making a transition. And there is a wonderful work going on, and there's a wonderful unity with spirit that's taking place. And our role in the physical, in the death and dying process, is to create a centering environment, to create a supportive environment, to certainly take care of the physical needs, and to comfort as much as possible the people who are making the transition. But to see that transition as another life experience, and that it is simply preparing us to step over into a new and continued life.
That must be very comforting for people who live with those in their families who have Alzheimer's and other senility problems. And it seems that so many people today do have. And if they just know that when their loved one is in that state, they're still learning and growing.
And to have that assurance. But of course, we still have grief, and we still have the sadness, because we do have to and we need to have empathy and compassion for people and for their suffering. But we need not believe that it is touching them or us as much as we believe it is, because it is all preparing us for that stepping forth into new life. And early in this talk, we talked, or you mentioned, the fact that we maintain our consciousness and our conscious level, and so we see and receive what we need on the other side. When we step forth from this life into the next, we will see exactly what we have agreed to see in our own minds. For those who want to see heaven, they'll see heaven. For those who want to see golden streets, they'll see golden streets. For those who want to see a peaceful place, they'll see a peaceful place. For those who believe that they're going to be punished and see a dark and foreboding place, they'll see that. But whatever it is that they choose to see will soon clear to the vision and the reality that they are where they need to be, and that regardless of what we expect to see, what we're going to see is the presence and the power of God. And what we're going to have is those around us and powers around us that are going to support us and nurture us. And so whatever we believe is all right. And whatever people believe they're going to see, they will see, because we take that consciousness. And certainly we've heard that from people on the other side, that they saw exactly what they wanted to see.
Exactly. Dr. Mattson, who channeled the book Witness from Beyond, which we both read, said, remember he said, when he first went over, that he could have the pearly gates and St. Peter, but he didn't need them. But he got St. Peter and the pearly gates anyway, because he had always envisioned that, and he had preached it so often, so many times, that it came true for him.
So he conditioned his thinking.
Right.
And of course, mind, what we know as mind, which is really and truly consciousness, transcends the mind. And so when we step out of this body, our conscious awareness goes with us, and we will see and experience exactly what we expect to.
And he had built that archetype for such a long period of time of the pearly gates in St. Peter that I think that's exciting that he got them. And then he laughed at himself in the book because he had preconditioned himself to that so much that that's what he got.
And there's nothing wrong with it.
No.
And of course, what we know is that everyone who goes over, everyone that we hear from, every bit of communication that we get from the other side supports the reality that the first thing that happens is we begin to be supported, healed, and loved.
Yes.
And then we decide what it is that we need. We begin the evaluation, we begin the education process, and life goes on.
And it just, all those things, all those books and all that wonderful information just points to the fact that life is eternal.
Life is eternal. And the real caution that we would give is those who condition themselves to believe that they're going to experience a negative experience, or that there's going to be a woeful judgment, or there's going to be vengeance, or there's going to be hell, or there's going to be fire, there's going to be suffering. That reality will be real for a period of time until the thinking, the thought process, and the consciousness of the individual is aligned with reality. And so even that is a transient thing. And of course, we see that in the theology of purgatory,
Yes.
which is exactly that.
Exactly. And what I hear you saying is we put our own limitations and don't limit ourselves. We should never limit ourselves, because not only do we limit ourselves while here on earth, all too often, unfortunately, but it's possible to limit ourselves on the inner in the same fashion. So don't put limitations up.
Absolutely. We need not put limitations to our thinking, and we hope that the information that we've been sharing with you about the other side has been useful. We believe that life is eternal and that God supports and loves and nurtures us wherever we are, and that the other side of life is coming to all of us and welcomes us. And we hope that you found this useful, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Confident living comforts my heart. From such a blessing I can't depart. Confident living helps me expand visions of value, the kingdom at hand. Confident living, talent to win, gift of the Spirit moves from within.